Are big winners and big losers every election night. 2022 no different, with one exception. Usually the winner and the loser face each other, and usually they're on opposite sides of the aisle. Republican Ron DeSantis won his race for Florida governor with a 20-point nearly margin. That's a landslide. And yes, Democrat Charlie Crist was the loser in the race, but there was a much bigger loser on election night as a whole, and that was Donald Trump. But before we get there, let's be clear. DeSantis didn't just win re-election in Florida. He blew out a strong candidate, a former Republican and former governor of the state in Charlie Crist. And maybe most importantly, exit polls showed that in the state of Florida, where voters know DeSantis and Trump, unlike states where DeSantis may not be as well known, only 33% of Florida voters said in exit polls they want to see the former president run in 2024. That is now a red state in the state where Trump lives and would be a must-win in 2024. 45% of Florida voters, Democrats and Republicans, saying they would like to see DeSantis run. Governor DeSantis covered Latinos in the state by 13 points. Compare that to Trump in 2020, who trailed Biden among Latino voters by 7. DeSantis even managed to edge out Crist among independents. Biden beat Trump with independents in Florida by 11 points. But it's not just that. Trump-supported candidates had a really rough night. Just to name a few, Trump was out on the trail with Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania this weekend. Vital seat flipped to Democrats. Some believe the former president's presence there may have hurt Oz. Trump's pick for governor in the state, Doug Mastriano, an election denier who helped Trump spearhead an effort to overturn the 2020 election, also lost by a lot. In New Hampshire, Trump was looking to help flip a seat in the Senate with Don Bolduc, who, in an effort to appeal to moderates, changed his tune after the primary and the 2020 election being stolen. In the aftermath of his loss, Trump, of course, claimed that had Bolduc, quote, stayed strong and true to the claims, he would have won easily. Republican Dan Cox, who was running for governor in Maryland, posted to Facebook, I was there in Philadelphia in 2020 on President Trump's team, and I witnessed the fraud. We must never let them rig and steal our elections again. Cox, who had Trump's big endorsement, lost handily to Wes Moore, who will now become Maryland's first African-American governor. There's also Republicans Jeff Deal, Lee Zeldin, who were running for governor in Massachusetts and New York, respectively. Both had Trump's full support, both lost. And there are races that have not yet been called, in which major Trump loyalists are trailing. As we just mentioned, 2 in Arizona alone, where Kari Lake is all in on Trump and even rumored to be a possible 2024 running mate, is still slightly behind, and even a little bit more behind in the last few minutes, in a race that hasn't been called yet. And Blake Masters is trailing Democratic incumbent Senator and retired astronaut Mark Kelly. That even less close. That one, I think, will be called in the relatively near future. Now, to be fair, other Trump endorsees did pull out victories. J.D. Vance in Ohio, Ted Budd in North Carolina. But overall, any fair assessment will tell you it was a really bad night for Donald Trump, who was looking to take credit for what was expected to be a big red night, as he told NewsNation's Marky Martin yesterday.
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all.
When he first said that, I thought he was kidding. But it's not just that DeSantis won and Trump lost. It also comes on the heels of attacks from Trump on DeSantis. First this, at a rally on Saturday.
Let's see, there it is, Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%.
Then during an election night interview, Trump said, I don't know if he's running. I think if he runs, he could hurt himself very badly. I really believe he could hurt himself badly. And then he went on to say this, I would tell you things about him that won't be very flattering. I know more about him than anybody other than perhaps his wife. What kind of statement is that? Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.